Well, welcome everybody, and we are happy to have you here, certainly for this forum, the Alzheimer's Community Forum. Give a hand. Dr. Boo Boo is going to be our instructor. Give him a hand. And certainly one of our leaders here in the New York chapter, Dr. Alvin Ponder. Give him a hand. Let me say this as they get started. Two things that I want to put on your mind that I didn't say in the Saturday Action Rally this morning. One is that tomorrow they're filming two scenes right here where you're sitting for the Nicole Bell story. Some of you might remember Sean Bell, yes, killed by police, yes, where they're doing a movie here and filming where the rallies were that started the movement around her. And they are going to do some of the rallies. I told them they had to get somebody good looking to play me. So they got Richard Lawson, Beyonce's stepfather. Is going to play Al Sharpton. But anyway, they're looking for 55 people that'll be in the audience, and they're going to give them $80 a piece. So that's a change. Usually I try to get $80 from you. Tomorrow you can get $80. You that want to sign up, see Katrina. And she will accommodate you. Secondly, the March on Washington. I want everybody to sign up to be at the March on Washington, August 26th. Sign up, we'll put you on a bus, we'll get you there. That's my two announcements. But I'm excited because the health of our community, there's nothing more important than that. And this vision that Dr. Alvin Ponder had of raising the issue of Alzheimer's, we do not need to just act like, well, it just come down in the family. Nothing we gonna do. Or you gonna die or something. We need to think healthy. Sister President check there, we need to think environment, which is part of health. We need to stop a slave mentality. And we're not in charge of our bodies and in charge of our environment. So that's why we welcome you to this session this afternoon. Let me give you Dr. Alvin Ponder.
Thank you, Reverend Sharpton. We thank you so much for the invocation and calling for the powers that be to watch over us on this great day. We're equally thankful that this forum on Alzheimer's disease is fortunate to be anchored in the expertise of our main speaker, Dr. Omeniho Boo Boo. Dr. Boo Boo is an assistant professor and physician scientist at NYU Grossman School of Medicine, one of New York's outstanding researchers on Alzheimer's and its related diseases. At the Grossman School of Medicine, he is shared by 3 departments: psychiatry, the Department of Population Health, and the Department of Neurology. That's the science of the nerves. Researching the impact of sleep, research on aging to better understand how they may be related to Alzheimer's disease. Dr. Boo Boo himself has completed graduate, intern, and fellowship level clinical and research training in, listen, neurology, neuropsychology, the nerves and the mind, neuroepidemiology, the statistics of the nerves, disease, and public health. As busy as he is, he welcomes opportunities to share his research's ongoing insights with this community, the final target of the results of his work. During our question and answer period at the end of his remarks, he will hear from you and take questions. Those of you who want to register or for membership, we have a membership table out here, and of course you saw the blood pressure screening outside where you can get your blood pressure measured as I did. To everyone present and online, I am most pleased to present our forum speaker, Dr. Omanigo Boo-Boo.
I want to thank you so much, Dr. Ponder, for this great opportunity. I count it a very, very, very honorable privilege to be here in front of you to talk about what I am passionate about and what my team, my group at NYU, Grossman School of Public Health, NYU Lincoln Health is very passionate about. So I'll be talking today about Alzheimer's disease, burden, and risk in our population. So I'm going to make this like a learning seminar. So I'll talk about Alzheimer's disease, facts and figures, just give you some data out there in terms of its burden, its prevalence, and how much it is disproportionately affecting us as Black individuals. And then I'm going to talk about healthy brain aging, and then I'll talk about dementia, and I'll specifically look at Alzheimer's disease dementia. I'll explain what risk factors, things that would increase our risk for coming down with Alzheimer's disease. And then I'll talk about prevention measures, things that we can be doing in our daily life to try to slow down any kind of progression of the disease itself. And then we will talk about available resources, and Oliver, who is part of the team at NYU, will talk about available resources. We've got other people from NYU here in the team, Laurel and Peyton. So they after the whole stuff, we would talk about studies that we're doing to help our community and encourage you to have conversations with them, and probably, if interested, sign up for one of these studies. Okay, so more than 6 million Americans are living today with Alzheimer's disease. And what the data shows is that by 2050, this number is projected to rise to nearly 13 million. Wow. And 1 in 3 seniors die with Alzheimer's or another form of dementia. And it's important to know that it kills more than breast cancer, it kills more than prostate cancer combined. $335 billion, that's the number. In 2023, Alzheimer's and other dementias will cost the United States $345 billion, and by 2050, this cost could rise to $1 trillion. It's important to know that over 11 million Americans, some of them probably in this venue today or in the audience, provide unpaid care for people with Alzheimer's or other dementia. And if we want to quantify that in terms of hours, in 2022 alone, unpaid caregivers provided an estimated 18 billion hours of care. And if you put that in monetary terms, that's approximately $340 billion. It's important to know in terms of sex distribution, 1 in 5 for women and 1 in 10 for men. We talk about the lifetime risk for Alzheimer's disease at the age of 45. So these are jarring numbers, and it's important that we know. As a show of hands, how many people in the audience know people with some form of dementia? So you can see what we're talking about. As a show of hands, how many people know caregivers or are caregivers themselves of people with some form of dementia? So again, we can see that it is very rampant in our community, and this is where our passion comes from. Let's focus on our community now. Half of African Americans, that's 50%, say that they have experienced some form of discrimination while seeking care for a person living with Alzheimer's disease. Only 48% of blacks report being confident that they can access culturally competent care. And only 53% of blacks believe that a cure for Alzheimer's will be distributed fairly without regard to race, color, or ethnicity. Can I get a witness in the audience? All right. 35%, only 35% of African Americans say that they are concerned, interestingly, about Alzheimer's or dementia. You know why? Because in some sects of our community, people actually think that dementia is a normal process of aging. It is not, okay? So 65% of black Americans say that they know somebody with Alzheimer's or dementia. We just did that here. We can see how many hands went up. 55%, that's over half of blacks, think that significant loss of cognitive abilities or memory is a natural part of aging rather than a disease. So what are we seeing here? A pattern of, either ignorance or lack of knowledge, right? Or a culture that thinks that it is normal to have dementia as we age. And so we're trying to correct that notion, and we're trying to bring information to the community, to people who look like us. And also you can see the data on discriminatory practices with respect to access to care. We're trying to break down those barriers, and we're trying to basically bring this knowledge to our doorsteps. Now, I know this will be very hard to look at, or to see rather, in terms of legible, but I'm going to explain what we're looking at. We're looking at the leading causes of death. This is females, non-Hispanic blacks. This is CDC data in 2017 that we're looking at by age group. I'm just going to focus on this group, and this is 65 and older. You can see it is the 7th leading cause of death in that population. And when you get to 85 and older, it becomes the 3rd leading cause of death. Now when you combine all ages, it is the 4th leading cause of death. Now importantly, when you look before the age of 65, you need to see the kind of medical comorbidities or conditions that are predominant. Here you see heart disease. This is in black females. You're seeing stroke. You're seeing hypertension. So these are cardiovascular morbidities or cardiovascular diseases. They serve as a precursor or a risk factor for Alzheimer's disease. So possibly, no wonder when we have all of these risk factors in middle age, then when we get to older adult age, then we see the preponderance of Alzheimer's disease or dementia or cognitive decline. Let's look at the male category. This is non-Hispanic blacks. United States 2017 CDC data by age group. 65 and older, 10th leading cause of death. 85 and older, the 4th leading cause of death. And then if we look at it again, 45 and above, you're seeing heart disease, you're seeing diabetes, you're seeing kidney problems, you're seeing HIV, that's infectious diseases. All of these are possible risk factors for dementia and also Alzheimer's disease. So we're seeing chronic medical conditions, vascular risk factors, infectious disease are risk factors for Alzheimer's disease. Okay? So now let's look at what healthy brain aging is. And this picture, if you guys can see it, it is the person that is Connie Tanaka when she was younger and when she was 117 years old. Now, this woman was functionally normal even at that age. So, what is healthy brain aging? It is the absence of symptoms of cognitive decline. It can occur well into the 10th decade in life. All right? Older adults with healthy brain aging will be able to still carry out their normal activities of daily living. They can also lead a productive and happy life. Examples in our midst, I'm sure we have people like that, but I can talk, I can ask a question. How many people know Dr. Tony Fauci? Show of hands. Okay, Dr. Tony Fauci, how many people know how old he is? Yes, he's like 80 years old, right? Like our President Joe Biden. Okay, but you can imagine how very sound and very cognitively functional Tony Fauci is. How many people agree with that? Yes, so and that's a proof, and I'm sure we have people like that in our midst, that you can age well, right, and be cognitively functional, all right? And that's what we really call healthy brain aging. But it's important to know, if I ask Tony Fauci about certain things, he'll tell you that, oh, it takes me longer to do them, right, than when I was a younger person. So, meaning that with age, it might take us longer to do stuff, right? It might take us longer to recall information, but it will usually come back, okay? So that's very important to know. So memory loss is not a normal part of aging. So that's the first lesson. All right? Memory loss is not a normal part of aging. Okay. Here we like, I love church, and I love, listening to speakers that have come up here, and I know there's a lot of repeats. So let's repeat after me. Memory loss. Memory loss is not a normal part of aging. Now I know. Okay, great. Thank you. All right. So let's look at something right in the brain. I just want to show you some stuff. All right. So if you look here, this is like a picture of a harvested brain, and we're looking at a cross section. Okay, you're not able to see my pointer, but what you're seeing there on this cross section is the different portions of the brain. So you've got gray matter, all right, the one that looks like a gray color, and then you've got white matter inside, the one that looks like white. Now on this other side, what you're seeing is a nerve cell. So a cell, right, is said to be the basic fundamental unit of life. So every organ in our body has a cell, all right? So in the brain, or in the neurological system, the cell is the nerve, so the nerve cell. So what you're seeing here is gray matter, white matter. Now, let's talk about normal brain aging, and I'll talk about it in that context of what I've just shown you. Now, related to gray matter, remember the gray matter I showed you just now? In normal aging, just like we have our skin wrinkling, we have our head graying, right? Gray matter would reduce in size. That's what we call atrophy. In the prefrontal region. So this is the frontal part, all right? We're saying just prefrontal region. And then you need to understand that these changes, so they're aging processes, normal aging processes, they occur even as early as 20. But it's important to know that they are masked by compensatory mechanisms. All right? In the white matter, remember what I showed you with the white matter? It's inside the inside part of the brain. You also have a reduction in size, so we call it atrophy. It occurs later in life and is associated with decreased cognitive performance. It is the reason why you may not, or someone like Tony Fauci might say, oh yeah, I'm not as active or functional, what have you, like I used to be. But it does not compromise functionality. It does not compromise the individual's daily activities, right? You can forget, but you remember. Okay, so it's important. And then other cognitive functionalities like executive or attentional dysfunction can occur, right? Or maybe some sort of impairment in working memory. This is all normal. But again, like I said, it's just a slowing, but you tend to remember. So this is just a picture showing you, now on the right, you can see a very robust, fuller kind of brain, and on the left, you see shrunken, right? Because of aging. That's not a problem. that occurs. And what you're seeing here, and I'm not going to really dwell on it, is the trajectory over time in terms of gray matter and white matter. The summary is, as we age, just like you see the wrinkling of the skin, as you see the graying of hair, right? Those things occur in the brain as well. And it is okay to, you know, have some slowness, but it is not okay when it compromises your functionality. All right? So let's talk about abnormal brain aging. And that falls in the realm of dementia. All right? So it is an umbrella term for loss of memory and other thinking abilities. Again, the key thing here, it is severe enough to interfere with your daily life. All right? So that's very critical. So functionality is compromised. All right? Now there are multiple kinds of dementia. So Alzheimer's disease is a type of dementia. Now it is the most common form of dementia. So about 60 to 80% of dementia cases are Alzheimer's type. You've got other kinds of dementia. And I'll mention just a few. Lewy body dementia. All right, just about 5 to 10% of that, of cases of dementia. You have vascular dementia. Again, just about 5 to 10%. You have frontotemporal dementia. I'm sure people here know Bruce Willis, right? So he's suffering from what we call frontotemporal dementia. Frontal, this means the frontal region, the temporal region are the most affected. And because we understand what these brain parts, you know, in terms of functionality, in terms of what is observed, we can tell, oh, this is frontotemporal dementia. All right? And then you have Parkinson's dementia, dementias of Huntington's chorea, that kind of stuff. These are, some of them are what we call tauopathies, because of the protein that is that we see in the brain, all right? So what are we seeing? We're seeing that these kind of dementia, the forms of dementia, are named based on, one, the abnormal pathology or the proteins that we see, or the origin of the dementia. So like infectious disease dementia, right? AIDS dementia complex, or HIV-associated cognitive decline. That's dementia of infectious disease origin. All right, vascular dementia is dementia of vascular origin, right? Because the person probably suffered from uncontrolled hypertension, diabetes, high cholesterol levels, obesity, and all of these problems that affect the vessels, the cerebrovascular system. All right, Lewy body dementia, because when we look at the slides in the brain, we can see the Lewy bodies, and we can tell that this is the kind of dementia. Or in terms of the function, right? Frontotemporal, because we understand what the frontal lobe or the temporal lobe, in terms of the cortices, what they do, and we can see, oh, this person is losing their personality, this person is losing blah, 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 and we can say, oh, this is the frontal portion of the brain that is affected. We do the imaging and we can see that that's correct. Okay? So, all right, what do we learn now? Dementia is an umbrella term, right? There are different kinds of dementia. All right? Can we say that? Dementia? It's an umbrella term for memory loss. There are different kinds of dementia. Okay, good. So that's a good lesson to know now. And there are many types, and Alzheimer's disease is the most common form. All right? All right. And so Alzheimer's disease, type of dementia, vascular dementia, Lewy body, frontotemporal, we've talked about this, and then less common, all of this. Again, and there are tons of them, up to 70 more. And then they're defined in terms of the pathology. These are just showing you, this is showing you a Venn diagram of abnormal proteins that we see accumulate in the brain that can tell us or point to the form of dementia. All right? So you can see A beta is the A and B here that we see. It's amyloid burden, alpha-synuclein, tau. You know, depending on what we see, we can tell if the person has Alzheimer's disease type, if they have Parkinson's disease type, if they have tauopathies, progressive supranuclear palsy, and all of these other kinds of dementia, or that can cause memory loss, or dementia that I just mentioned. Okay? So what are the warning signs of dementia itself? Number one theme is memory loss. So you're seeing memory loss. So that's important. Then there's difficulty, again, compromising functionality. So there's difficulty performing familiar tasks. There's disorientation in time, in place, and sometimes in person. Person loses their personality. They don't know who they are anymore. They can't tell you the correct date and time. They are not oriented in time, place, and person. There's also withdrawal, right, from work or social activities. Or there's poor or decreased judgment. This individual that you know, very highly functional, dependable, all of a sudden, very poor judgment, right? Misplacing things and not remembering where they are. Those are signs, right? Problems keeping track of things. Disorganized all of a sudden. Not able to function as they were. Changes in mood and behavior can happen as well. There might be trouble with images and spatial relationships. So they have spatial temporal disorientation and problem as well. And then you can have problems with language difficulties, word finding difficulties that never come, right? Just looking for that word, it never comes. Now, I know some people here said, oh Lord, is that me? All right, so, I'm sure that it's coming back. If it comes back, then fine. All right. Now, understand, when we talk about all of this, we're talking about it in the context of functionality. All right? So there are normal processes of aging, but when you begin to have functional problem or dissonance, then there's a problem there. Okay? If you know someone experiencing or you are experiencing any of these symptoms, all right, you need to talk, begin conversations with your doctor. Okay? So let's talk about Alzheimer's disease. We've said it's a form of dementia, the most common form, 60 to 80%. All right? Let's talk about why we call it Alzheimer's, what makes us call it Alzheimer's. It is the pathology itself. The pathology just means the disease process. What is going on that makes us know that this is of Alzheimer's type, right? This dementia is of Alzheimer's type. Now what you're seeing on the extreme left is the nerve cell that I showed you before. This is a slide that shows you the neuron. The neuron is the nerve cell. You see a normal neuron there. And then when you look at just where you see Alzheimer's, this is the Alzheimer's disease, pathology that we see when we look at it under the microscope. We see what you call neurofibrillary tangles. Tangles just mean things tangled up, right? And then neuro just tells us nerve, and fiber is just fibrillary. So there are fiber-like substances that are tangled together. We see them inside the cell. So we say it's intracellular, inside the cell. These neurofibrillary tangles are aggregates of a protein, abnormal accumulation of a protein that we call tau. All right? And so you could have phosphorylation. This means there's an addition of phosphate group to some of the bond endings that results to this tangling that occurs, and then you have all of these tangles inside the cell. On the outside of the cell, you've got amyloid plaques. So they're called extracellular plaques. They accumulate, all right? On this extreme right, you can see amyloid plaques, and then we'll show you how neurofibrillary tangles look like under the microscope. So when we see this, we know that, the dementia is of Alzheimer's type. Now, usually, previously, the person must have passed, then the brains are harvested, then you look at the slides, then you can tell. But now, with proper technology and advances in technology, we can actually see this in vivo. In vivo means in life, right? You're alive, we do imaging, it's called PET imaging, and we can trace and we can actually, quantify how much of amyloid plaques or how much of tau tangles or the proteins themselves, how much burden how much of that is in the brain. The beautiful thing as well is we're doing a lot of stuff trying to find out to see if we can use just blood samples and see the levels of these abnormal proteins and if we can tell if somebody is at risk or on the journey for Alzheimer's disease. So Alzheimer's disease is a very long prodromal phase, meaning it has, when it starts like 15 to 20 years before people actually begin to see symptoms. A very good example is like cancer. You go for your breast mammography, you're fine. You go for your cervical pap smear, you're fine, there's nothing wrong. But then, you don't want to get that call, but unfortunately you get it because they say, oh, we found something, right? It's not like you're ill, it's not like you don't feel like nothing's wrong, but they say, we need to take a biopsy because we think that we saw abnormal cells, right? That's the beginning of the disease process that's going on. That's the same thing with Alzheimer's. So about 15 to 20 years before the clinical onset of symptoms, these things accumulate. And if you know and are following the treatment of Alzheimer's disease, you will know it's been very, very tough for the scientific field to find a cure or to find a proper treatment. Because we've tried so many things in different trials, and we've noticed that, oh, it looks like we're catching it too late, right? People already have this dementia, and all those trials have failed. So now what's happening is we understand the pathology to a reasonable extent, and then we're now targeting those pathologies, and we're trying to catch a little bit earlier. So some of those medications that you're hearing about are called monoclonal antibodies. So they target these abnormal proteins that I showed you about, the amyloid and tau, and we're seeing some sort of progress. Slow, but progress, all right? So, again, if we want to contrast healthy brain aging to Alzheimer's disease, right? You're looking at normal brain aging. I said you could forget, but it comes back, right? It's not a problem. You could lose things from time to time, but you find them. But with Alzheimer's disease, those things you never find those things because there's a deterioration, right? There's cognitive compromise, and then there's a functional compromise. All right? So what are the 10 signs specific to Alzheimer's disease? Very similar to stuff that we talked about when we talked about dementia. So again, memory loss, changes in mood, right? Misplacing things, mood changes, social isolation, poor judgment. All of these things, like you will see in dementia, are signs that we should all watch for. Very important. Okay? All right. So what would be, in terms of, now that we know this, let's talk about the risk factors and what we can do, right? So generally, any kind of medical condition, there's always an interplay of the environment, of the individual themselves, and some genetic predisposition, right? The interplay of this would determine your risk, my risk of a particular condition, all right? So if I have no family history, my risk might be lower. If I have a family history, my risk becomes higher, right? If I have comorbidities in terms of hypertension, diabetes, high cholesterol level, poorly managed, then my plus maybe genetic predisposition, then my risk goes more higher, right? The environment, sometimes we can control, sometimes we cannot control. You know the history of our community, it's pretty difficult for us to be able to control that, right? So it's very tough for me to tell somebody, you've got to eat right, when all around the person is junk food. Very tough for me to tell somebody, you've got to exercise, when there are no parks, there are no, what have you, very tough. So sometimes we cannot necessarily control our environment, right? But these are the factors that play a role. And these are some of the reasons why, as black people, we have a higher burden of everything. Higher burden of Alzheimer's disease, higher burden of hypertension, higher burden of this and that and that. Because of historical, generational, discriminatory practices, policies that have disenfranchised us as a people. Yeah. All right? So, like Reverend Sharpton said just now, we don't want to stay there, right? We want to do something. This is me doing something about it, and you hearing, doing something about it too. Coming here and listening. And hopefully you learn one or two things, and then you can, do something about it as well. Now what you're seeing here, I'm just going to summarize what it's telling us, right? It's showing us risk factors in terms of things that are modifiable. Modifiable meaning we can change, and things that we cannot change. Right? Now, this is a study that actually quantified modifiable risk factors. And what they came out with was approximately 35 to 40% of risk of Alzheimer's disease is modifiable. That's good news. It means we can do something about it. All right? There are things we cannot do something about. There are things we can do something about. Right? Okay, so what are these risk factors? Age, nothing you can do about it. Right? Older age, we want to grow old. So it will be, but older age is a risk factor for so many things. Chronic medical conditions, cancers, hypertension, diabetes, what have you. And there's a reason for that, right? As we age, our bodies deteriorate to a reasonable extent. So, but there are things we can do to slow them down, right? Slow that poor aging process. Have you seen an 80-year-old man with muscles, lifting weight, right? So because he said, wow, your body looks nice, isn't it? Right? Because he was doing something. He slowed down the deterioration of the muscle fibers, right? And there's hypertrophy that has gone on and it looks great. So, and there's so many other things. Now I'm not talking about all the many surgeries, you know. You know what people do in the celebrity world? Try to slow down their aging. But either way, they can make it fine on the outside, but there's a lot of stuff going on the inside. We can't do much about it, right? A family history, we can't do much about that. There's no way you can change that. Genetic predisposition, you can't change that. If you have a inherited gene, you know, existing or things like, you know, comorbidities, myocardial impairment, disease processes, Down syndrome is a genetic risk factor. There's a problem in utero, and then you have Down syndrome, right? Individuals with Down syndrome have a specific kind of Alzheimer's disease, which is early onset, all right? Or unhealthy lifestyle, right? Things that would increase our vascular risk, smoking, lack of exercise, eating wrong, you know, junk food or what have you, not living right, no healthy diet, those things can increase our risk. Right? And a previous history of head trauma or being isolated, right? These are factors that can increase. So let's make it very clear, you know, non-modifiable on the left, modifiable on the right. Modifiable are things we can do something about, right? Diabetes, hypertension, depression, obesity, sleep problems. These are medical conditions that have effective treatments, right? So if you've been diagnosed with diabetes, hypertension, high cholesterol, depression, sleep issues or problems, right? There are non-pharmacological methods or pharmacological therapeutic methods that are very effective in terms of things we can do. Even lifestyle changes, right? That can reduce our risk for all of this. All right? So we understand now what some of these risk factors can, you know, predispose us for this disease. The other thing is neuroplasticity and Alzheimer's disease, meaning the brain being resilient and being able to compensate, right? And in a sense, you know, weather the storm, right? For cognitive decline as people age. So it's important to know this. The brain continues to change its structure and function as we get older. But there is evidence, scientific evidence suggesting older adults compensate. So we can compensate for decline using different areas or by building new pathways. And I'm going to tell you how you can build new pathways. So studies have shown, compared to older adults who performed lower on cognitive tasks, high-performing adults were able to access different areas in their brain in order to compensate for normal aging effects. As we get older, we may rely more on other areas like the frontal cortex rather than the hippocampus. The hippocampus is a portion of the brain that really subserves memory, right? But what we're learning here now is that there are compensatory processes and mechanisms that can take place if we engage our brains, all right? So, can neuroplasticity be improved? Yes, that's the answer. Well, the way our brains store memories, right, may change as we age. The brain can adapt new ways to recover and compensate for normal memory changes and even those due to Alzheimer's disease. We've seen it in scientific studies, finding that early dementia patients are able to learn, regain abilities and improve their cognitive functioning. And I know you're asking me, how can they do that? The best way to do this is by engaging your brain. Part of what you're doing right now is engaging your brain. Some of you are hearing some words you've probably heard it for the first time. That's fine. Some words you've known before, but you're consolidating on what you already know. That's great. So mentally stimulating and challenging activities will promote and encourage the brain to develop new connections and consolidations, all right? So that's so important. And then we maintain the ability to learn and employ new strategies, even in early AD. So, because it's just called a mild cognitive impairment period. So mild cognitive impairment, you're still functional. So that's the best time. If there's any diagnosis of such, we're saying that you can still learn and employ new strategies to delay progression. So reading comprehension, problem solving, social interaction, they can help maintain memory and executive functioning abilities, all right? I tell people, put it in 3 categories, all right? The very first thing is learn new things. Learn new things. It could be cards, like playing cards, playing brain games, right? You never rode a bike. You can learn to ride a bike, all right? You never knew how to swim. You can learn how to swim. You want to learn a new language, you know? Or we're talking about knitting, right? Just knitting and all of that. Something new. If you learn something new, your brain would have to form neuronal connections, you know, consolidate and compensatory processes that will help slow some of this stuff in terms of cognitive decline. So learn new things, number 1. Number 2, consolidate on what you know, right? Consolidate on what you know. For repetition is like the law of deep and lasting impression. So you know how to ride a bike, keep on riding your bike. You know how to speak a language, but you've not spoken it for a while, right? Try to do it, so that your brain will go back and draw back those memories and draw new consolidations and help to slow down any kind of decline. All right? And then the last is exercise. Exercise is so key. It's like a panacea for anything in the body. Brain health, cardiac health, muscular health, right? Exercise is critical and important. So, exercise is widely known to protect the brain and the body from the effects of aging. You know that. Just gave an example of an 80-year-old man who is exercising in muscle, whatever you see them, looking great, because it's beneficial compared to, this is studies, compared to older individuals with dementia or cognitive impairment. Studies have shown that those who exercise for 6 to 12 months perform significantly better on cognitive tasks. Another study showed that 1 year of aerobic exercise was found to be associated with larger hippocampal volumes. Again, remember the hippocampus is the memory area, right, in the brain. It subserves memory. And then even they were able to have better spatial memory. Exercise can also protect the brain from further impairment by preventing effects of cerebrovascular disease. A good cardiac health equals a good brain health. All right, so important. Okay, let's show you one of the other risk factors, and this is like our forte, what we do at NYU. Sleep, we've noticed that sleep as well. The studies are showing that poor sleep, being sleep deprived, having certain sleep medical conditions or diagnoses like obstructive sleep apnea, they possibly increase the risk of Alzheimer's disease. So I'll just tell you about sleep, you know, in older adults. So, just briefly, there are 3 stages now of sleep, okay? Broadly categorized into 2 stages. Rapid eye movement just means we see that the eyes are moving rapidly during that stage of sleep. And really the first stage is the non-rapid eye movement, all right? So the stage, there's no rapid eye movement. Okay, the non-rapid eye movement is classified into 3, stage 1, 2, and 3. Then you have REM, which is rapid eye movement sleep. And that's what you see here. So at night, it's a cycle, about a 90 minutes cycle of sleep. So stage 1, non-REM, that is non-rapid eye movement, all right? The individual is just falling asleep. That's when you're doing like that, you know? The beautiful thing is that I've not seen somebody doing that here. So, yeah. So, that's stage one. And then there's stage two. Stage two, of course, you're getting deeper in sleep. Stage three, deep stage of sleep. And then you go into REM. You know, REM is usually the place where people dream. People can also dream in non-REM, but mostly in REM. And then you go back again that way. All right? So, but what I want to show you is just as we age and there are setting changes, changes also occur in sleep. This is what we call a hypnogram, and I don't expect you to interpret this. I'm just going to explain what we're seeing here. Now, I'm showing you the sleep of a young adult, about 20-year-old, 45-year-old, and 70-year-old. If you look at this color, this yellow is the wake period. Now, look at this, 20-year-old, meaning once they hit the bed, boom, they're gone. You see the yellow is very small, it's smaller, right? They spend a less amount of time. And look at when you begin to grow older, right? So I see people say, that's true, it takes me time to fall asleep. Yeah, you can see that here, right? 45-year-old, the yellowness grows bigger, right? And then 70-year-old, even more bigger, right? And this is stage one. You can see relatively conserved across all age. And then here you're seeing stage two, all right? Again, relatively conserved across all stages in terms of ages. But look at this. This is the deepest stage of sleep. It's called slow wave sleep because when we look at the EEG, we see the activities, under the electrical activity of the brain, we see what we call delta waves. They're slow, you know. Just look at this. Look at 20-year-old. Look at how white this is, right? In fact, if I show you an infant's hypnogram, you'll see that this is even more wider, all right? But then it narrows, and then it even further narrows. So we can see that there's a reduction in the time spent in slow wave sleep as we age. This is normal. Let me tell you the importance of slow wave sleep. This is where memory consolidation takes place. In younger children, you know, it's very important because you're having growth hormone release. You know, there's a lot of neovascularization taking place. So that's why they spend more time there. So you can understand, you know, the 20-year-old still has some growing to do, isn't it? So they spend more time here than the older adults. I know some people say, no, I still want to grow older. I know. But this is not about aging. This is about time spent in slower sleep. But the important thing, to link it to Alzheimer's disease, we were learning, and we're still learning, that during this stage of sleep, those abnormal proteins I talked to you about before, all right? Amyloid plaque. Can we say that? Amyloid plaque? Amyloid plaque. Very good. I'm going to make some doctors of people today. And then we have tau tangles. Can you say that? Tau. All right, good. These are the pathognomonic, meaning the very, very features of Alzheimer's disease. We're noticing, we're learning, we're still learning, we're noticing that the deep stage of sleep, many of the brain debris are cleared, you know? And so, when people don't have spend time deeply in that stage, what happens? You have accumulation of these plaques, right? We're also learning in terms of obstructive sleep apnea, the hypoxia, meaning a reduction in oxygenation in the brain, right? Fragmentation is fragmented sleep. As we age, as you can see here too, right? Because you spend a lot of time awake, fragmentation occurs, all right? But then, you know, there's always too much of everything that becomes bad. You get what I'm saying? So the point here is changes occur. These are normal changes, but they are normal when it becomes, you know, it's worse than what we're seeing here in terms of the numbers, right? It's spending little or no time at all in slow wave sleep. Excessive fragmentation of sleep. Sleep deprived, right? Obstructive sleep apnea diagnosis. Many times, many people have obstructive sleep apnea. They don't even know, right? These increases the risk for Alzheimer's disease. We can see that REM, time spent in REM, is relatively also conserved. So, normal aging, what's the summary? Older people tend to go to sleep earlier. They experience fragmented sleep, all right, meaning they spend more time awake. You can see that the time spent in slower sleep is reduced. And then the prevalence of sleep disorders, just like many other comorbid conditions, increases as we age, all right? For example, obstructive sleep apnea, depending on the clinic, whether it's a clinic sample, whether it's a community sample, the prevalence goes from about 30 to 80%, again, depending on the age group as well, all right? And then individuals, as they age, are less sleepy. So what happens in Alzheimer's disease? In the early stages, sleep problems are very prominent, all right? People may sleep more than usual, or they may wake up disoriented. In the mid stages of Alzheimer's, they may sleep during the day, awaking frequently throughout the night. And in the more advanced stage, they have what you call sundowning. So they rarely sleep for long periods, they doze irregularly through the day and night, and then sundowning can occur. That is a complete reversal of the usual daytime wakefulness, nighttime sleep pattern. All right? So that can occur. These are problems that can occur in sleep. So sleep is intricately tied to Alzheimer's disease and its pathogenesis, as we're learning. So that's why we're looking at it. And while we're looking at this, all of these metrics I've showed you in terms of the sleep characteristics, with a slow wave sleep, being deprived, the duration we spend in sleep, and all of that. Unfortunately, you can tell blacks and other minoritized populations have, the brunt of the stick, meaning they sleep less in terms of the duration spent in slow wave sleep. They are more sleep deprived, right? They have a higher burden of obstructive sleep apnea, and so these are things that can contribute, to us having a higher burden of Alzheimer's disease. Okay? In summary, how can we nourish a healthy brain? I just told you, and I like the three-part, and these are just dividing it into specifics. But generally, you want to learn new things. Can you say that? Learn new things. Okay, good. Secondly, we want to consolidate on what we know. Can we say that? Consolidate on what we know. And the third thing is exercise. Exercise, exercise, exercise. All right? So important. All right? Every other thing here, bad diet, obesity, being frail, depressed, anxiety, loneliness, comorbidities, bad sleep, unhealthy diet, all right? All of this would increase our risk for coming down with Alzheimer's disease. So this is just showing you specifics: physical exercise, healthy diet, regular sleep, engaging cognitive stimulating activities, be socially active, all right? And then stress management, very key. You know that, I know that, as black people, isn't it? All right? I'm in the car, and I see a popo, shining light. My heart begins to race. I forget that I'm MD or PhD. It doesn't matter. They scream at me and shout at me. You know what it means? And my blood pressure can rise from that, right? All right, you're black, your neighborhood, there's gunshots here and there. That will cause you stress, So, the uniqueness of the stress that we face is different. So we need to begin to find solutions that are what? Different, that are tailored to our population. This is what we're here to do. All right? So I want to thank you for your time. I'm going to tell you a brief story. Okay, thank you very much. We're not done yet. Oliver is going to talk about some of the things that we do. But before he does that, I want to tell you a quick story. We'll have questions just briefly. I want to tell you a quick story in terms of why this is important, why you should seek support. And Oliver is going to talk about that. So let's look at this scenario. This is a true story. Some of them I'm just going to put some made-up things there because I don't remember everything in details. But this is a meeting that where people are determining what to do or intervene in communities of color. The issue was breast cancer. So breast cancer, they were looking, these are, high-level people that meet together to determine this. And they were looking and saying, we're seeing very good significant progress in breast cancer reduction in whites. We're seeing it in this population, we're seeing it, but there's one population that were having issues. Which population do you think they were thinking about? Black women. All right, so they now said, okay, you know what? this is a solution-oriented meeting. You should understand. These are meetings where recommendations occur in terms of age at screening, in terms of what you need to do or what you don't need to do, or all of that stuff, or what kind of medication you want. And so, and everything that is done, that pill you're taking, it's data-driven. Somebody was tested, or that from a mice before being a human being, to test the therapeutic dose, to test the pharmacokinetics to see what's going to work, right? So they want to know what's the evidence out there. And then this person gets up and says, oh, you know what, this data from the Scandinavia, you know where the Scandinavia is? And some of you don't even know. We're talking about Sweden, we're talking about Norway, we're talking about, so it's like, look at the data. This is what the data showed in these women, blah, 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 blah. And I was, oh, very good, very good. Another person got up and says, oh, look at this data. It's 100% white women, but this is what happened, blah, 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 blah. And said, oh, wonderful, that's great. And another person got up and said, oh yeah, this is that data from this community. That community is 99% white. And he says, oh, this is what happened. And said, oh, great, we now know the solution. Tell me what the problem is there. The beautiful thing is that we had somebody there, not Reverend Al Sharpton, but somebody like a community activist was there and said, hold on a minute, what are you trying to do? I said, oh no, we're trying to prefer solutions to the black woman. I said, but there's no study there about the black woman. How can you translate Norway data, Sweden data, white people data? And then they said, oh no, how dare you? We've been trying, there's nothing we can do, we can't reach them. Because they don't agree to participate in studies. Okay, good. So you're going to prove it to us today. So, but understand me, the hesitancy of black people, based on the historical context, to hesitate to participate in research is very understandable. And I understand that, and I acknowledge that, you know? But the good thing that we now know is that certain things are changing, right? This house has done a lot, you know, and we know the shoulders that we stand on, that changes, you know, even though slow, has occurred, right? There was sometimes not too long ago that black people couldn't even vote, right? But you can cast a vote, even though they're still trying to suppress the votes, but you have the right to cast a vote, right? Me standing here in front of you is part of the progress on the shoulders of these great leaders that we stand upon, you know? So I'm trying to tell you that there are things that are there in place that we are now passionate. We've got to help ourselves. I'm standing here because I'm passionate about this. You know, my people, it's me, and I know that if we try to do this, come together, participate in studies, then we'll have data that will influence our own healthcare. All right? So let's welcome Oliver to just talk to you about some stuff. Thank you.
Another round of applause to Dr. Boozer. I just want to introduce myself. My name is Oliver. I'm one of the coordinators at NYU Grossman School of Medicine. I work alongside Dr. Boo Boo and the remainder of my team at the Healthy Brain Aging and Sleep Center. At our center, what we do, we investigate several of the risk factors for Alzheimer's disease and other related dementias. And I'm here to bring to you some of the resources and some of the things that we have and offer at our institution, all right? And so our main mission is to promote disease awareness and provide people with the necessary resources, information to stay informed, stay healthy, but more importantly, stay empowered to make decisions about their health, all right? And so we firmly believe that the key to this is educating the community, providing awareness, letting them know what resources are out there, okay? And so up on the screen I have why it's important to seek support. And primarily we need to not only accept the answers that are given to us, but ask questions, okay? And so I want to start off with one of our primary resources. At our center we have something called the Family Support Program. So Dr. Boo Boo asked you previously, how many of you know someone who's suffering from dementia, right? And that was, I saw quite a few hands up in the sky. So one of the things, go back to this here. one of the things with this is that caring for someone with dementia comes with several challenges, right? And given the unpredictability of dementia itself, the management of taking care of someone with dementia, caring for them and providing safety, it can be very isolating at times. So at our program, we have something called the Family Support Program that not only provides care to those suffering from dementia, but care to caregivers as well. And we offer solutions, consultations, management, one-on-one programs designed to create better care patterns, better care programs and resources for caregivers and those suffering with dementia, okay? And so typically when you enroll in this program, you're set up one-on-one with a social worker who works with them and families to help navigate any of the challenges they may be facing. And so some of the services include a comprehensive evaluation of your situation, okay? And then following that evaluation, the social worker develops a tailored plan to help you and your family members and loved ones get through proper care and preventative measures, okay? And so some of the things here as well, and this just restates our mission, we're trying to enhance the quality of life and well-being of family caregivers and people suffering with dementia. And so we have care consultation services, clinical services, support groups for caregivers, and something called caregiver respite. And so through these programs, people with early stage dementia will be set up with a social worker and they'll start working on preventative measures, ways to slow down that progression, okay? And one thing I want to mention about this program is that all services are free, all right? There's no need for insurance. It's something that you enroll, sign up for, they evaluate your situation and provide you free services and resources, okay? Now, we also have something called the Buddy Program. One of the common symptoms of dementia is social isolation. And just like Dr. Bubu mentioned, one of the things that we can do to prevent and possibly slow down the progression is remain socially active, engage our brain. Because if you don't use it, you what?
Lose it.
You lose it. And so the Buddy Program, what this does, it pairs an adult with early stage of dementia with an NYU graduate student for a sort of mentor friendship program. And it's considered a place in the space for people to gather, socialize. They have games, they have ways to keep people with early stage of dementia active. And so this Buddy Program is great. You can see in the photo we have people dancing. And so they provide activities and educational seminars and resources for people suffering with early stages of dementia, okay? And so typically they meet monthly for a form of companionship. They meet up, sometimes there's food, sometimes there's certain activities. So it's a good resource. I encourage those who know people suffering with early dementia. I encourage those people who know them to send them to our family support program, okay? And at the bottom here, we have some additional resources. Heightsite.org, and just to mention, all these resources will be given and distributed out in the back on the family support program, but hillsite.org is another online resource and directory that connects New Yorkers with free to low-cost health services, okay? And so that's very important because quite often, sometimes, certain institutions, certain places might not take your insurance, and the cost of that care may be extremely expensive. So this is a way in which we help those navigate to provide free and sometimes low-cost health service and social services, all right? Now, I want to continue getting back to what Dr. Bubu mentioned about the research example he provided in Scandinavia. Right? One of the things that's important, and I'm so grateful to be in front of you today, is that we ask people in our community to join us against the fight against Alzheimer's disease. Now, this disease is affecting people of color at a disproportionate rate. And what is unfortunate about this is that the majority of the research on this disease has been done on white populations, right? And so minority communities, they continue to remain woefully underrepresented in Alzheimer's disease research. And there's several reasons as to why. There's lack of access, but also lack of awareness, sometimes lack of education. And we can't forget about the history. The history of medical research, the history of minority communities, and the mistrust within medical research institutions. And that mistrust is rooted in past experience of exploitation and mistreatment. But at our center, what we're trying to do is address these issues, combat these disparities, address these disparities. And so I can proudly say today that we're one of the few groups that are primarily looking at Alzheimer's disease amongst minority communities. Okay? Now, what we want to do primarily is educate the community. Every month we hold seminars, educational seminars, to first provide resources, but also education to empower our community, give us the knowledge to make actionable choices, and give us opportunities to enroll in certain programs and research studies. And just to mention, I wanted to mention some of the studies that we have here. And of course, we'll explain more details, the schematics of the studies, but I wanted to highlight one study that we have on sleep, aging, and culture, okay? And so Dr. Bubu mentioned that one particular aspect of our sleep could potentially reduce some of the buildup of what we call AD, Alzheimer's disease biomarkers. And that stage of sleep is called slow wave sleep, okay? And so one of the things we looked at is discrepancies in sleeping patterns in certain groups. And what we notice is that African Americans tend to sleep shorter periods of time, but more importantly have poor sleep quality. And so that leaves them at a higher risk of potentially developing early onset dementia. So we developed a study to investigate this. And so here's the things. This sleep aware study examines how race, genes, other factors impact an individual's risk for developing Alzheimer's disease. And so what we do, and I'm gonna take you through the schematics of this here. What we do a full evaluation, okay? And so for the first visit, we bring you in and we do a physical exam, we do a clinical exam, and we do blood analysis. And then following that, the second visit, we do a memory evaluation and a sleep interview where we gather information about sleeping habits. And then for the third visit, we do an overnight sleep study to get a comprehensive look of how you're sleeping. We measure brain activity, oxygen levels, heart activity, and then to end it all, we do neuroimaging. And so the importance, and just to speak about neuroimaging, the importance of that is that we want to see what's going on in the brain. Not only do we want to look at the structure of the brain, but we want to look for the presence of any Alzheimer's disease pathology, any biomarkers associated with Alzheimer's disease in the brain. And so what we do at our center, we take you through a full evaluation, and we look at that. We look at how you sleep and how that correlates to the presence of certain biomarkers that could appear in the brain, all right? And so this is a very standard format for a majority of our studies, but with every study, there's certain eligibility as well. And we have several studies, and I'm gonna take you through a few more that we have, investigating some of the risk factors amongst African Americans and minority communities, all right? And so just to highlight here some of the eligibility, the minimum age that we accept for a majority of our studies is 55. For this one, it's approximately 60 to 75, but we have studies that go all the way from 55 to 85, okay? And so primarily we're looking for people who identify as African American in majority of our studies and are able to come in and do a full memory evaluation and also able to do certain things like a sleep study or a scan, okay? And another eligibility requirement is that you live in the greater New York City area. Now, another study we have here, and this is Dr. Bubu's project coming very soon, is a study that investigates sleeping disorders, specifically obstructive sleep apnea, which is highly prevalent in minority communities. And so obstructive sleep apnea has been well associated with some of the biomarkers of Alzheimer's disease, and we see that this could potentially increase someone's risk. So not only are we investigating the sleep patterns of certain individuals, but we're also looking at sleeping disorders such as obstructive sleep apnea. And that's what Dr. Boo is doing here with this study called ASCEND AD, and AD means Alzheimer's disease. Another study we have at our center is called the REACT study. And so what this study is doing is taking into account social and environmental factors. And one of the things we're looking at is the effects of social stressors, primarily a lifetime of racial and ethnic discrimination. And we're trying to see how this could impact memory and impact one's risk for developing Alzheimer's disease, okay? And so this is just a brief overview of a few of the studies we have. And we have a number of studies at our center and a number of resources. And I encourage all of you at the end of this presentation, I believe L'Oreal, Peyton, my team is back there. We have brochures, flyers, bags. I encourage every one of you to take that information. It has educational components attached to it. And just to give a quick highlight of our team, here's our team. You can see me pictured in the middle down there. L'Oreal, Peyton on the right, Dr. Boo up top. We also are Dr. Ricardo Osorio, he's not here today, and Dr. Gerardine, John Louis. This is our primary sleep-aware team, okay? And we also partner and collaborate with the Alzheimer's Disease Research Center, all right? And so this center is a full center that is meant for not only evaluating Alzheimer's disease, but they have clinics that have people with dementia and have treatment methods. And so I encourage everyone to use these resources. And I just want to end the day by saying thank you. We appreciate the National Action Network for providing us with this platform. What we hope to do and continue to do is promote and raise disease awareness, talk about the things that are affecting our community, educate the community, and provide you with the opportunity to make choices, okay? So thank you very much.
Thank you. Let's give them a round of applause. Oh, we got a good crowd here. Now, this portion right here, you can ask your questions. And am I going to use this mic right here? Or we have a mic over there. Why don't you just line up over here, and I'm going to hold the mic. I'm going to hold the mic. All right. And how many minutes do we have on this?
Yeah, how many people are going to play?
How many are you going to do? 15 minutes, 10 minutes?
Two. So we have 25.
25 minutes? Oh, boy. All right. Well, we're not going to take 25 minutes. All right. I want you to ask a question. I do not want you to give a testimony or a speech. Okay? Ask a question. I'll hold the mic. State your name and what borough you're from.
Good afternoon. My name is Sierra Scott, and I live all the way in Queens. Wanted to ask you, have you looked at lead as one of the determinants as to memory loss and onsets of dementia?
I think that's very much known in terms of lead poisoning leading to neurological deficits, including memory decline. And one of the other perspectives that we're using to study Alzheimer's disease is looking at a life course perspective. And so, sources of lead or exposure to lead are usually like in the houses we live, right? And the pipes, and all of that in water, And so there are, and I do know like in the pediatric population, there are, we do serial lead poisoning tests in terms of determining toxic levels of lead, because somehow, lead is so much intricately used in many of the building stuff, and all of that stuff. So but absolutely, I think it's well known that lead increases the risk for neurological deficits and disorders in children. It can delay developmental abilities. And as people age, definitively with affectation in the brain can lead to cognitive problems and dementia. Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Brenda Ricketts, and I live in Yarmouth. My question involves the advertising you see on TV. They show Prevagen, Noriva, and other primal mind fuels. Are these things any good?
That's a very good question. The first thing I'll say is that many of those advertised medications are not necessarily FDA approved. I really speak on those. But what I do say is this. Things, we very much affirm the patient or the individual themselves. Some say that it's working for them. We will not negate that fact, And some have said it doesn't look like it's working, We also would not negate that fact. But whether we would begin to recommend those, in the medical field, we rather recommend what the FDA has approved in terms of therapeutics, or in public health, we can tell you things that we know that you can do without necessarily swallowing a pill or any kind of medication that can help you slow down the risk of any kind of disease process, including healthy diet, including eating right, including exercise, including if you have diabetes or hypertension or what have you, you should take your medications properly and all of that stuff and make sure that you're controlling all of this stuff. So if the question is, do they work? For some they do, for some they don't, but they are not necessarily FDA approved.
Boy, that was a good question.
Good afternoon, my name is Janet. I would like to know how beneficial a vegan diet is in preventing the Alzheimer's disease.
Very good question. So there are studies, looking at diet, nutrition, and early onset of either cognitive decline or what have you. What I can tell you is a particular diet that's been studied very well is the Mediterranean diet, right? That they have said, it is very healthy and all because of its healthy status and nature, right? It reduces your risk for cardiovascular outcomes or any other outcomes that could be a precursor or a risk factor for cognitive decline, dementia, or Alzheimer's disease, all right? So vegetables are a good source of nutrition. It's a healthy form of eating, all right? But, meat products, if done properly as well, a healthy source of protein and all of that stuff, So, are there studies looking at just vegan diet with cognitive decline? Absolutely. In fact, people who, strict vegans, right, seem to have, in some studies, not all studies, excellent health outcomes. And we can all tie, I don't want us to look at it in silos, so it's a vegan diet. I think the main theme is healthy diet. Because the key thing we're not in the Mediterranean here, we're in Holland, right? Or think about people in the South with the Southern dishes and the sweet, lovely fries and the chicken and what have you, right? It can be eating healthy, you understand? So it's just, the summary for me is have a healthy eating habit and a healthy diet, all right? That would make sure you have proper weight control, will not lead to obesity, would reduce your risk for cardiovascular outcomes that can help your brain health. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
This is from Mother Ivy Walton.
You just about more or less answered my question, because what I wanted to say was, does it have a whole lot to do with our eating habits, and mainly like the junk food and all of that, so forth and so on. But like I say, the first lady asked a question about our eating habits, and you more or less explained it, so it seems a little bit clearer to me. But that would have been my question. Does it have something to do with our eating habits?
Okay, very good. Yes, you're absolutely correct. Eating habit is the key. So again, the umbrella will be healthy diet. So if you are a meat eater, you can still eat healthy. If you're a vegan, you can eat healthy. What the key thing is a healthy diet and eating habits, all right? And I think that's key. Part of it, you know, in our community is educating our community on what sources of nutritional healthy meals are, right? And there are talks, you know, we can come back and talk about nutrition and Alzheimer's disease. We can also come back and talk about evidence-linking exercise and Alzheimer's. We can talk about sleep, we can talk about infectious disease. And break all of those risk factors with respect to Alzheimer's disease. This is what we do in many of the educational events that we do. So summary is a healthy eating habit is very key. Not just to brain health, but to every of our well-being.
Thank you. Doctor, give us your name and your borough.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jesse Fields. I'm a primary care physician right here in the Harlem community. And my question has to do, I'm working with a group called a Creative Coalition for Justice. So it's trying to both bring forth and address the stigma, the stereotypes that people with dementia and their families and caregivers face, and also bringing in performance, theater, arts, music, movement as getting people with dementia, caregivers, families, and so forth, and others who want to be supportive involved in ensemble activities. And we see that as very helpful in helping the person stay engaged. So my question is your group interested in working with people doing that kind of activity?
Absolutely.
We would love to be involved.
Absolutely, yeah. We are very interested in partnering with the community. I mean, look at what this is doing. I am so ecstatic to be here, thanks to the National Action Network, thanks to Dr. Pondo. So if you grant us as a community stakeholder access to your community, absolutely. Our goal is to educate and grant people access to information that will help us reduce the burden of chronic medical conditions, including Alzheimer's disease, in our population. Absolutely.
That was great.
Good afternoon, Dr. My name is Anthony Nance. My question is, as I heard you start off, you were talking about the gray matter and the white matter. Seeing as how females are born with more white matter than gray matter, and males are born with more gray matter than white matter, does that have something to do with it? And I wanted to know if you work with IMS Health and Amen Clinics.
Yeah, good question. So yeah, if your question is tied to sex differences in Alzheimer's disease burden, absolutely, that's a possibility. We know in terms of size of the brain, in terms of sex and gender, right? With males even having larger brain volumes. We also know that things like, premenopausal versus postmenopausal risk factors are there, tying to hormonal differences that can cause sex differences in Alzheimer's disease. So generally what we know is that women are more likely to have a higher preponderance of Alzheimer's disease. There are many reasons why. Could be one of them is part of what you're talking about. But the other thing really is, the longevity could be, a bias because women have a longer life expectancy than men, and Alzheimer's disease is a disease of aging. But we've seen in studies that do imaging the pathology, right, in the brain in terms of tau or even amyloid burden, tau especially, women have more burden compared to men. We've seen, hormonal differences in terms of premenopausal versus postmenopausal, timing of hormone related treatment, and all of these factors actually increasing or decreasing risk for Alzheimer's disease. So yes, there are factors that could be responsible for sex differences in Alzheimer's disease burden. And the brain volume, in terms of white matter, gray matter, can be one of them.
And the rest of my question was, do you work or have you thought about working with Amen Clinics and IMS Health?
Oh yeah, good question. So what are those clinics again?
Amen Clinics. Amen Clinics. It's one. They have an office on 14th Street. So what they do is when they're looking for cognitive defects, they actually like look at the brain. You know what I mean, and see what's going on. And my stepmother, she was a person that worked for IMS Health, so those are people that find that, you know, and they sell off the
Oh, I see. So no, we don't work with them, but again, if we are willing to partner with people, you know, in our studies we also do imaging, and these are all free, okay? And it's not like free, they are free, like, because you pay for it, you know? You say, oh, how can I pay for it? Because I have to write a grant to the NIH, and then they get it funded with taxpayers' money. So you pay for it, all right? So they're free. The imaging that we do, all those comprehensive testing that Oliver showed, they're free, they're part of the study. We try to make you comfortable as much as you can. We send you lots of beautiful cabs to pick you from your home to the study center. We can take you back, we'll feed you if necessary, and then we compensate you for your time. So that's so important. Again, it's all your money. So if you don't use it, what happens? Okay, this time around you don't just lose it, you let the white people have it.
I like that part, compensate for your time. That means you get paid.
Hi, it's Sandra Moore. I'm from Bronx, New York, and I'm considering changing doctors. The sleep disorder is a seizure once a month. And he's brought it down to like every 2 months I don't have a seizure. I started with once a month. Now he's trying to get the dosage. Is it too much medicine or is it less medicine or whatever? It's been about 5 years. And I'm thinking of changing doctors. Maybe I'm considering because he's an older man. And I was thinking going to a more younger man doctor. Because he knows what he's doing, I know, but all of this 10 years, he's going up more medicine and down more medicine. He's trying to find out, but he's taking a long time to do this. But I'm seeing, I was recommended after all of this, one seizure. So I'm trying to, how would you feel recommend another doctor over this neurologist? I know it's diet.
Okay, good. So I'm just going to tell you that there's no harm in seeking a second opinion. All right? That's just it. If you feel that you need a second opinion, do it.
Now, that was a simple answer, right? Get a second opinion. Very good.
My name is Anita from East Harlem, and I thought it was a very good and insightful workshop because my knowledge of Alzheimer's has only been from movies like The Notebook and, you know, one of the latest Planet of the Apes. And that's what I thought was interesting about the fact that he was talking about sleep disorders because we're aware of people with Alzheimer's becoming disoriented and, you know, being missing. They go missing. But they also show us them growing aggressive. And that would cause problems if you're trying to keep them in a normal population. So I thought it was interesting that you were saying, talking about the component of socialization due to the fact that they do show them, I'm not, you know, because I don't work with that population, being aggressive. So is that an issue or is that just something you put in the movies?
Yeah, so what we're talking about is to prevent the full-blown Alzheimer's disease when there's nothing we can do about it, all right? So we're telling you about right now, even now that you have some good cognitive functionality, you should exercise, you should do social interaction in interactive events or whatever, because once you become an Alzheimer's disease full-blown, then you're just dependent, you know? And those symptoms that you expressed, sundowning, mood problems, you know, loss of personality, that individual is not cognitively normal, is no longer functional. They need caregivers. That's not the stage we're talking about. We're talking about preventing that stage from occurring.
Oh, good. Hello, good evening.
Hello.
I'm so grateful for you taking your time to come here today, and I appreciate it. I have a few questions. Oh, first of all, I'm sorry. My name is Natasha, and I'm from St. Albans, Queens. Now, my first question is that you mentioned amyloid plaque buildup, right? Amyloid plaque in the brain. I'm trying to find out exactly, besides it being mentioned that it comes from a lack of sleep, but do it come from other things as well?
Yeah, so when amyloid does not come from a lack of sleep. It's an abnormal protein that we see accumulating or being present in the brain in an individual that has Alzheimer's or is on the pathway to Alzheimer's disease, especially if we're able to see it in vivo. In vivo means in life, all right? For amyloid itself, it is a protein, okay? And usually proteins in the body would have enzymatic processes, chemical processes by which they are formed, all right? And by which they are cleared. So, in terms of the formation of amyloid, there's what you call an amyloid precursor. That's before amyloid, protein, APP. That
A proton or a protein?
protein.
A protein.
Protein.
Oh, protein. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So there's the APP, which is the amyloid precursor protein. That is, and then there's an enzyme as well that, you know, is a precursor to amyloid being formed. Amyloid as a protein in the body, all right, is not necessarily detrimental, all right, because it has its functionality. But then, when the body builds up anything, you have waste, and then you excrete. You know, you take in water, the pee that we pee looks like water too, right? But it's waste, it includes waste. So with amyloid, when it becomes to, you know, because of some processes, then you have an abnormal buildup in the brain that forms the plaques. So that's the pathology itself. We're saying that what we're noticing is in the deep stage of sleep. So normally the brain will clear those things, all right? Just like we eat, there's digestion, the waste, we go and do number 2, right? We take water, or what have you, then we go to number 1, right? The same thing, the brain clears, you know, itself of debris after what we call metabolism has taken place, you know? And we notice that during the deep stage of sleep, the brain is clearing some of this debris. So if people do not spend a good amount of time that they should in that stage, then you have accumulation of this, meaning it's not able to clear, all right? It's not like it's sleep that is causing it. We're saying sleep can facilitate and precipitate because there's no longer a clearance mechanism taking place.
When it's clearing, where is it going to?
Oh, it's a waste. It's disposed of the bodies.
Okay.
All right?
I have another question too. When you said also amyloid plaque, there's another one called tau.
Yeah.
How do you spell that one?
T-A-U.
T-A-U. Okay. And on to the next question. The association, is the association at all with people who sleep, talk in their sleep, and and also Alzheimer's at all? Later on coming as an onset at all?
Yeah, so you're asking if there are other sleep disorders in which we're seeing associations with Alzheimer's disease. Yes. So apart from obstructive sleep apnea, you know, insomnia, we're seeing that, circadian rhythm abnormalities, REM behavioral disorders, So yes, there are other disorders that we're seeing this. Why? Because there's a compromise, right? You know, in terms of the stages of sleep, or whether it's NREM affectation or REM affectation. So yes, we're seeing associations with dementia risk in some other sleep disorders as well. Yes, absolutely. Could Alzheimer's be genetic? Yes, there's a genetic risk, but it's very, so there's two types broadly. There's the early onset Alzheimer's, which is usually as a result of genetic predisposition in those individuals. Like 40 years old, they're already coming down with Alzheimer's disease, 40, 45. Then there's the sporadic type, where family history might not necessarily play a role, genetic risk might not play a role, they might also play a role, but you know, when you look at the number or percentages, right, 80%, over 80% is sporadic, meaning risk factors like vascular risk, exercise, bad diet, all those kind of things, you know, and the person comes down with Alzheimer's disease, or they don't have a genetic risk, okay? But there's genetic risk, which is a familial onset. Those like people with Down syndrome, they would start showing signs of Alzheimer's disease at a very, very early age, 40 and so, but there's a small fraction, about, you know, less than 5% of the population for that, you know?
Thank you, Dr. Boo. We're going to move to the next question. Let me ask you this, though. You began talking about these proteins, and they were described as biomarkers. And then we started talking about the waste and the removal of them, which suggests that there is a causative effect of these proteins on Alzheimer's. You didn't say that, but you're suggesting that. Tell me the science behind that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so, you know, when these proteins accumulate, right, and you have plaques, and then the tangles, neurofibrillary tangles forming, they basically accelerate neurodegeneration, all right? So they make the brain shrink faster, loss of neurons and neuronal connectivity. They trigger inflammation in the brain and all of that stuff. They can affect different areas of the brain, language area, spatial-temporal area, cognitive area, memory area, right? And when they accumulate in these areas, we notice that the place where they accumulate, we see corresponding symptomatology. All right, so yes, as it stands right now, they are causal because they are the pathognomonic features of Alzheimer's disease. If we see amyloid burden exceeding a certain threshold plus tau, that individual is said to have Alzheimer's disease.
My name is Richard Glasby. I'm from Manhattan. I just want to ask a quick question about, do you have any books on that stuff? You know what I mean, as far as prevention is concerned?
Do we have, can you say that again, please?
Your literature on Alzheimer's disease, you know, in reference to any kind of books or papers.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You can, oh yeah, and you can talk to any of the guys out there.
Would it include, like, the nutritious?
Yeah, absolutely, and that's what we talked about. We said, I put it into 3 categories, right, in terms of prevention techniques. You want to, for brain, you want to learn new things, right? You want to consolidate on what you know, you want to exercise, and that includes, you know, walking, cycling, swimming in terms of exercise, you know, it includes reading, it includes you being present here, learning new things, hearing new things, educating yourself. It includes, you know, riding your bike, or, you know, taking a walk if you decide, and eating right, managing if you have hypertension, diabetes, or other chronic medical conditions, right? These are things that you can do that can help make you healthy and ultimately slow or prevent progression to any sort of cognitive decline or Alzheimer's disease.
Thanks for being here, because I need to know about that because I'm getting up in age myself. So I'm trying to, what I'm doing in reference to my life is concerned, instead of doing a little faster, you know, a little faster.
Very good. Very happy to be here. Thank you.
All right, we got about 5 more minutes, and I'm gonna try to get through these. Just state a question, and let's see if we can get through it.
Yes, good afternoon. Thank you for being here. Your seminar was very informative. My name is Julie Davis, and I'm from Queens, New York. I have just 2 minor questions. The first question is an MRI the only way to detect whether or not someone is presenting with Alzheimer's, the beginnings of it, or can it be done with the blood, or both?
Yeah, so it can be done with both, right? Previously, what we were able to do is take CSF and cerebrospinal fluid, and we can look at the abnormal presence of the protein in there. Now we can do PET imaging, PET MRI, and detect them. Now we're doing stuff we're detecting them in blood as well. So yes, we can detect them in all of these avenues that you talked about, yes. The only thing there is actually understanding what their values would mean in these different, substances, whether it's CSF in the brain, that's central. You need to understand that there's a big difference between centrally derived versus peripheral, which is the blood. So we're trying now to be able to look at both of them and be able to see if we can just detect this in the blood and tell that that person is on that trajectory or probably has Alzheimer's disease. Yes.
Tell the audience what a PET scan is.
Yeah, so a PET scan, it's PET. It's called positron emission tomography. Usually it involves a tracer. So the tracer helps to map out places in the brain where there may be any accumulation or presence, right, of these abnormal proteins. So it's an MRI, but then we do a tracer assisted that is injected to help map out, and we see where these pathologies are in the brain. And so that's what really a PET MRI is. It's positron emission tomography. All right?
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Lenore Ashford, and I'm a member of the National Action Network. And I'm requesting to ask you that is there a possibility that I can get a scan of the brain and the x-ray source, a copy of it?
If you do the study, right, and you request that, absolutely, you have a right to, if you fit the criteria for the study, you do, and you want that, absolutely. There's no reason why it's your right to be able to demand that, absolutely.
These are some good questions. These are some good questions and some things that I'm thinking about.
Hi, my name is Rhonda. I traveled here from Queens, and my question has to do with the gut and the microbiome in the gut, the relationship to that and the brain, waste, abnormal proteins, all of those things in mind. It makes me question if there are studies that are currently going on or have happened or are on the books for the direct relationship between the chemical makeup in a timely manner, not later, but as it's happening, and how it relates to what's happening in the brain with regards to how those proteins are actually getting there to begin with.
Yeah, so what I can tell you is that there are studies that have been published, there are studies that are ongoing, and there are future studies that would look at this, all right? So yes, we're seeing associations with gut microbiome data, with association with cognitive measures in terms of performance and cognitive tests, or even some of these brain pathologies. So absolutely, there are studies going on, and it's very interesting, to see how the gut microbiome data, is associated with quite a number of things, disease processes, not just brain-related, but yes, we're seeing stuff like that. And in the ADRC, that's the Alzheimer's Disease Research Center at NYU, it's optional. If anybody who signs up, we usually collect data as well for looking at gut microbiome data. So those anybody with such person will provide stool samples and other things like that that we'll be able to use to determine, the microbiome of the individual and try to look at that, correlate that with cognitive performance and test all the proteins in the brain. Yeah, absolutely.
2 more short questions and answers.
Very short. Good afternoon, and thank you for this wonderful presentation.
Thank you.
My name is Kay Marie Presley, and I'm a member of NAN, and I chair the Golden Agers / Intergenerational Committee, so I'm excited to bring back this news. I wanted to find out if there's a correlation between like injury, like brain injury, like if there's an accident, between that and dementia and what should I say, Alzheimer's. I remember as a child I had a brain injury. This is what I'm asking. And it took a little while for me to recover, but I'm now healed and everything, but it affected my brain. I fell when I was learning to walk as a baby, and I had bleeding inside of my brain. So could you answer that question?
Yes, traumatic brain injury is a non-modifiable risk factor. There's really nothing you can do about it. It does increase your risk. Is it causal? Does it mean it's absolute? No, it's not an absolute risk, but it definitely increases your risk. So your risk will be higher than somebody who has not had a traumatic brain injury.
This is, I guess, the last question.
Yes, my name is Nola Pendergrass. I'm a registered nurse. I'm a NAN member, lifetime member, and I've worked in geriatrics and psychiatry and all of that experience. But I want to know the studies that you were mentioning before, like in Finland and different places. Do you think there's any correlation with living in the city? I now live in the city for the first time, and the noises with the fire trucks going and all the loudness with the loud music and all kinds of sounds all the time. And people, it's a city that never sleeps, so does that affect, or have any correlation with, nervousness or?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So your question in general terms will be looking at neighborhood environment, right? And association with cognitive outcomes. Absolutely. There are studies of that have looked at neighborhood environment, and this time in terms of social structures, whether it's a kind of area deprivation index, poverty index or ratio. Yes, I can tell you these social determinants of health or social factors increase anyone's risk for cognitive decline and or dementia and or Alzheimer's disease.
Thank you very much, Dr. Boo. Let's give him a great round of applause. Oh, you can do better than that. Give it up. Now, in the back, we have some information for you. I think they're still doing the blood pressure screening outside. No, that's over with. We still have the membership table over here. If you want to join the National Action Network, I recommend that you do so. I have a presentation. First of all, let me acknowledge my wife, Valerie. Stand up. I met Valerie here in 2015, and the joke that I perpetuated is that she came here to find a husband and she ain't been back since. But she's responsible for the refreshments. I'm going to reward her with a nice lunch. I just gave her some flowers a few days ago, but I do have 2 bouquets of flowers that I'm going to give out. And my wife is going to give it to them. One, Karen Peterson does not want to be acknowledged. She is the liaison between me and Dr. Boo Boo. She told me all about this. She works in the field of outreach and health, and so she's going to get some flowers. And I don't know, Katrina, how you're going to take these flowers home with the baby, but there's going to be a bouquet of flowers to Katrina. If it's a problem for you getting home, you do it on my Uber account. So listen, thank you. All right, and we'll see you next Saturday.
calendar a round of applause in the Health and Wellness Committee for putting on this fantastic forum today. This will be the first of many forums within the health and wellness space, and we want you all, yes, become a member, and that's the easiest way to remain engaged and to stay connected to what we have happening here at the National Action Network New York City chapter, especially as it pertains to our health. Okay, and so I want you all to make sure that you do join. You have something to say? And that you leave your information, sign up, do whatever you can to be present. Just put over here for me, and stay connected to what we have happening here, and certainly as we go into the summer months. Also, for those of you who heard the announcement regarding filming tomorrow, the time is on the flyer. It says 1 o'clock p.m. You are here at 1 o'clock p.m. You'll just line up right at the door. I'll be here to open up, and we'll get you all squared away then. We're not doing anything in advance. Everyone just show up at 1 and make sure you grab a flyer that has the notes regarding wardrobes. That's very, very, very important, so we can be time appropriate to the time frame. All right? Have a great day. We'll see you next Saturday, 9 o'clock a.m. for the rally, followed by the forum that is being put on by the Men's Auxiliary. Thank you. Say thank you.